Hello everyone, I am Dwayne Rothman and I am the Furious Wrestling Fan. Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you enjoyed your Christmas or whatever it is that you happen to celebrate. And I hope you had a happy new year. And it is a new year, and so we're going to be doing something new. For the first time, I've had something requested. And so we're going to try to do that right here. And what this is the first classic review that I'm going to be doing here on the channel. And this request was brought to me by Nick Opaleski. And Nick, I sincerely apologize if I have butchered that last name. But he requested that I review a video on the WWE Network called WWF World Tour 1992. Now, reviewing and watching anything from the early 90s and prior, I will admit right now, is sort of difficult for me to watch. And the reason for that is being that I grew up in the Attitude Era. I grew up watching the Monday Night Wars, and then, by the time I was, I guess, really able to start comprehending what it was that I was watching, it was getting to be the Ruthless Aggression era by this time. And so that's the kind of style that I'm used to. The style of even mid-90s, early 90s, and 80s and prior, it's a whole different animal. And it's a lot slower. It's a lot more technical based from, best that I can tell. And so it's just a whole different feel, and it's a whole different thing. And it's downright boring to me at times. So it can be difficult to watch. But keeping that in mind, that it is a different time, it was a different era, and the entire way things were done was different back then, it would be very easy for me to just go, well, it's not action-packed enough, or it's not quick-paced enough, it's not exciting enough. Knowing what it is that I was getting into before watching this, and knowing that the style was different, I had to try to keep an open mind and, really just take what I was watching with a grain of salt, and, really try to judge it from what it was comparing it to what it would be considered now in comparison to now. So with that being said, for the first classic review, once again brought by Nick Opaleski, this is WWF World Tour 1992. And I'd never seen any of these World Tour videos before. Because again, I don't watch a lot of the early 90s stuff, and when this would have came out onto the market, and this is one of those Coliseum home videos, and this is a thing, way before the network and that sort of thing. They would do like these compilation tapes with a bunch of stuff kind of put together, in like a package style format and release under Coliseum home video. So this is one of those things. But I didn't really realize that at first. I realized that it was a Coliseum home video because they kind of bring that forth right at the beginning of the show. But after a little while, that's when I finally realized what it was that they were doing, because I didn't do like a whole lot of research into the show before watching it. But it was a lot of different matches filmed at different times, at different locations, as part of different shows. And that right there it made it really difficult for me to stay invested, to stay interested, and to continue watching the show. There wasn't anything as far as like a storyline, and then there wasn't a whole lot as far, I don't know. It lacked a reason for me to care, I guess. The show opens with Lord Alfred Hayes, and it's Alfred Hayes is interesting to me because if he's on commentary with somebody like Gorilla Monsoon or something, Alfred Hayes seems to do all right. But the minute that he's got to stand in front of a camera and try to do like a little promo or anything of that nature, he's very dull. And you can see his eyes like kind of darting around like he's trying to read his promo off of a cue card. And it sounds like he's reading it off of a cue card. So it was kind of a bland opening to the show already as it is. When we go to the first match, it is High Energy, the team of Owen Hart and Coco Beware versus the Beverly Brothers with the Genius as their manager. The Genius obviously being Leaping Lanny Poffo, the brother of Macho Man Randy Savage. Right away, there was a little nostalgic feel kind of came over me as soon as I seen High Energy coming to the ring, because that was just that look. Just kind of, to me, epitomizes the 90s. You know, they had, the like real baggy, pulled up high MC Hammer pants with, like the racing checkered flag suspenders, and it looks extremely ridiculous now. It might not have back then, but today, looking back on it, it was ridiculous. Always been a big fan of Owen Hart, so seeing him in this opening match was really nice. Owen immediately starts working the left arm, which is something that... and I'm going to talk about this kind of thing quite a bit throughout this show. Owen Hart starts working the left arm, and immediately I thought, well, it seems like you don't really see this sort of thing in today's modern wrestling. And even if you do, it's not done properly. Is the best way I can put that. When these guys would start working a body part or something like that, there was a purpose to it. There was a reason they were doing it, and they did it methodically, and there was a method to it. You would go from, like, say, an arm bar to some of the heels would then, like drape it over take that arm and wrap it over the top rope, just bending it and twisting it and just, really working over a body part. And it seemed like that's something that you don't really see anymore, at least not like this. So it was nice to see. The Beverly Brothers, they're obviously the heels here, and they're doing typical, classic heel stuff. The slicking back of the hair, the strutting, around the ring, real cocky and arrogant, the, running away from, the baby faces, etc. Once again, a problem in some wrestling products is that it's kind of hard to tell who the heels and baby faces are, which is an essential thing if you're trying to tell a story in, as far as a wrestling match goes. You need to know who is what. And it's not as clearly defined nowadays. There was this really neat, like kip up bridge to, Test of Strength by Owen Hart. It was a really cool thing to see. The crowd at one point starts chanting LOD for some reason, and they said something in the commentary about the Beverly Brothers that they must have been having some kind of a feud with the LOD at the time, maybe, or something. I don't know. It was really not completely defined, I don't think, but the LOD chant, I thought, in the middle of this match was a little odd, but you can't control the crowds, obviously. You actually had hand-to-hand tags, which is rare anymore in the modern, wrestling product. So again, the hand-to-hand tags was nice to see. Nowadays, you get a slap on the back or the shoulder or, whatever. And as far as the rules are concerned, a tag is supposed to be a hand-to-hand, connection. So just to see the hand-to-hand tags, again, the way things are supposed to be done, was a nice change of pace. Let's see here. The Beverly Brothers had some classic teamwork. They were cutting the ring in half. There was some double team moves on the part of the Beverly Brothers. The match starts to break down a little bit. And again, you see that in every single tag match, it seems like anymore. But with this, the referee gets involved. Instead of like modern wrestling product today, and the referee just stands off in the corner and just lets these guys do whatever the hell they want, this referee is actually trying to restore some order, trying to, grab a couple of competitors, pushing them back out of the ring, trying to get them, back out of the ring, and then in turn is being distracted. And one of the Beverly Brothers uses the clipboard, or this scroll-looking clipboard thing that the Genius was carrying, and bashes one of the other guys, and I believe it was Owen Hart, in the head. Well, still, even in the commotion, the referee, he notices it, he sees it, and you get a DQ finish. The Beverly Brothers are disqualified. And, back then, disqualification finishes were a little more common. And you're seeing a disqualification finish and stuff today, especially, and even like count out, victories and stuff. It's really lame. Nobody wants to see that kind of thing. But it was a lot more common then. So with that being said, I tried to just go, okay, that was kind of the thing of the times. It's just something that happened, and it happened often, or at least more often than today. But anyways, what I was getting at before I got a little sidetracked was that when the match broke down, they actually did it with the referee trying to restore order, and again, it was done the way it should have been done. So at the end of the match, there's a little bit more of a brawl. The Beverlys in high energy, a little bit more fighting before the Beverlys finally, in defeat. They end up walking off. So, overall, it was, I feel like, a typical early 90s tag team match. Like, it wasn't, like, blow your mind, one of the greatest matches you've ever seen, but compared to, today's modern wrestling product, the action itself was a little slow at times, but that's to be, a given. For the time period, but the way that the tag team match was structured, and that's one of the biggest problems I have with today's modern wrestling, is their tag team wrestling and how much it sucks, because there's no rhyme or reason for doing the things that they're doing. There's no structure. There's no, I forget the word that I'm looking for, but it's like they forgot how to do tag team matches, and this right here was an example of how it should have been structured and done. Anyway, we move on, and we go to, some arena somewhere, and I forget what they said it was called, but you had Alfred Hayes and Bobby the Brain Heenan. They're in the royal box in the stands where, the Queen would be present for, certain events or whichever. Heenan doing what he does best with, cutting things down and, that sort of thing. He made some kind of a reference to, this is, I'm going to get loud in here when they do the tractor pulls and things like that, and they're in this really nice arena. It was kind of funny. Didn't really have any rhyme or reason to be on the video, I don't think. It didn't really do anything for me, but we go to the next match, which is supposed to have been a 20-man battle royal, but they join it already in progress, and there's only 3 guys left by the time they join this match that was in progress. Essentially, the Mountie and Typhoon are trying to double team the Bulldog, but in a very quick fashion, once they start this match, obviously already in progress, Bulldog wins. And that was basically it, which I was, to be honest, was fine with, because, again, I hate battle royals. I hate multi-man matches. And I'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. But essentially, this clip, this highlight of this 20-man battle royal, was basically a highlight to be part of a highlight profile of the British Bulldog. Because they go to that where Bulldog wins to this little interview segment with the Bulldog and his parents. And, okay. Again, it really hadn't... I see what they were trying to do with it. They're trying to, give some spotlight to the Bulldog and stuff. And I mean, okay, I guess. And then we go right from that to the next match. And the next match also has the British Bulldog. And the British Bulldog goes up against Repo Man, a.k.a. Barry Darsow. He was also Smash in Demolition and was formerly also known as Crusher Khrushchev in Jim Crockett Promotions. So, Barry Darsow, Repo Man, he jumps the Bulldog from behind to try to gain the early advantage. Once again, we get the working of the arm once the Bulldog regains control, and the Bulldog's working the left arm. Repo Man is poking at the eyes 2 or 3 times on the Bulldog. Bulldog retaliates by doing the same thing 2 or 3 times. There was a lot of eye poking in this match for some reason. At one point, Bulldog, he seems to have the advantage. Repo Man's kind of, on the mat, trying to pull himself up, and he grabs Bulldog by the tights. And I don't know if he was supposed to, pull Bulldog down and Bulldog fly out of the ring, but he kind of just tumbled over like a Jenga tower, just kind of bleh. And that looked weak. I don't know exactly what was supposed to happen there, but it didn't look good. Bulldog does gain the advantage back. He shows that strength that Bulldog is known for, with the stalling suplex, and follows it up with the big power slam, and Bulldog wins. An okay match. The only thing that I really wanted to see was, Bulldog showcasing that strength and power, which I've always been a fan of. Got to see a little of that here, but again, there was really no rhyme or reason for the match, I guess. So it was, again, just kind of We go from that, and then we go to Bulldog visiting the old school that he went to. And they're playing up a match at Wembley, which I'm assuming was the IC title match with Brett at that year's SummerSlam. So we go from that, and the next thing is another match, once again featuring the British Bulldog, this time against the Warlord, and it was from WrestleMania 7. So here we go, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is now the 5th thing featuring the British Bulldog in a row on this tape. And this World Tour, I was assuming was, after I realized that it was multiple things coming from multiple venues, multiple shows, that sort of thing, I was going to get a lot of variety. Instead, essentially what it seems like I got was a highlight tape of the British Bulldog, which is fine. Again, I do enjoy the Bulldog's work, but it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. There was a lot of British Bulldog going on in here in this tape. So now we have the British Bulldog against the Warlord from WrestleMania 7. It was interesting to me that they put a WrestleMania match on this tape. And I haven't seen WrestleMania 7 all the way through, so I've never seen this match. But essentially, you got two big powerhouses. And this one really showed the difference in the time to me. Because the crowd here at WrestleMania 7 for this British Bulldog Warlord match are really into it. And they're really into everything that they're doing. The entire less is more mentality was really evident here, because something as simple as a bear hug and, the Bulldog trying to, break free and things like that, the crowd is going nuts over it. You see that kind of thing today, and it's like a match killer, you know? So, and it wasn't just in this match. It was a lot of matches that I've watched on this show, and it's evident for a lot of stuff that you watch back in that time frame that they don't have to do much, and the crowd is so into it, you know, compared to nowadays where everything has to be 100 miles an hour and, you know, all the time, and flow gets lost. That's a story for another day. But so the crowd's really into it. You get typical big guy stuff here, you know, some clubbing blows, and, you know, the guys, you know, running into each other off the ropes, you know, the shoulder tackles, but they don't sell them, you know, things like that. Not a whole lot to speak of in this match. Eventually you get the full Nelson by the Warlord. Bulldog fights it for a while. You know, you get that typical, you know, oh, he's fading, and is he going to be able to get out and stuff like that. But the Bulldog finally does get out, and you get the running power slam from the Bulldog, and the Bulldog wins this one too. Again, just kind of a blah match for me. It's the two powerhouses, it depends on who it is. I've always felt that that's kind of especially in that time frame, it was always hard to see, you know, two big powerhouse guys, you know, go at it in a match, because the styles, since they're so similar, they don't clash well, and it can be very dull and very boring. So, I kind of felt like that with this match too. And it just kind of was what it was. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great neither. So, after that, we get a thing with Alfred Hayes at Buckingham Palace talking about how he was going to, I guess, have tea or something with the Queen or something. Once again, I don't really... Other than the fact that it shows, hey, I'm in England, and it just kind of goes with the theme of being around the world. Really didn't matter, so I could have done without that. We go to this video was called At Home with El Matador. And it, I guess, essentially was supposed to be a highlight piece for El Matador, also known as Tito Santana. And it was supposed to be him at his home, a little promo at his home, but you can tell that this isn't his home. It doesn't look like a home. It looks like a pre-stage set. It feels like a pre-stage set. So it was... right away, I felt, okay, this is... And this is one of those things where, with the time frame that I grew up with and what I'm used to, if you're going to do one from home, then do one from home. Instead of this pre-staged, stagey set that's you're trying to pass off as his home. You know, immediately, I didn't like that at all. And again... for the time, that's just something that was done. I get that. But I just can't look past it. I don't like it, and it was... Santana talks a little about a couple of the mementos that are supposedly in his home. It goes to this celebration where Tito is celebrating with some people in the streets. They had this bullfight where, you know, El Matador's supposed to be a bullfighter, okay? Well, they do this bullfight, and they have this real close-up of Tito Santana's face, and all it is from, like, his chin up. And then when it goes to the actual, like, bullfight for a few seconds, it's way off in the distance, so you can't see who's actually in the bullfighting ring, and you can tell it's not Tito. So, it was... obviously staged, and it was the other person was obviously a stand-in. It was really lame. It was comical at best. So that finally ends, and we go to our next match, which was Roddy Piper versus the Barbarian. I've always been a Roddy Piper fan. Barbarian I haven't seen much of, but I know of him. You kind of start out with the collar and elbow tie up, and they get pushed into the corner, and then they roll to like the next corner still in this tie up, and there was a lot of standing around before that. There was a lot of standing around after that. You kind of get this test of strength, and then there's some more standing around. We go to some bear hugs. I'm falling asleep at this point. This was very, very slow. It was so slow. And it got very boring, very fast, and it was very hard for me to try to stay invested in watching this. There wasn't a whole lot to speak of besides a bunch of standing around. Really, there's nothing that I can really remember, and I've just watched this, but there was a lot of standing around and not doing anything. Essentially, this snooze fest ends when the Barbarian blocks this sunset flip. And, he sits down on the shoulders of Roddy Piper and he grabs the ropes. Well, then the referee kicks the hands. Roddy Piper then rolls him up, gets the 3 count. That was a surprising way to end the match for me. I don't think I'd ever seen, at least not too often. And you definitely won't see anything like this today because you have to have 123 false finishes. But this roll-up pin, and he gets the victory. It was an interesting way to win the match, I feel, because at least in hindsight, because of how different it was. And I know, there was a lot of roll-up victories and stuff. Again, it was part of the time. That's kind of how some things were back then. But thank God it was over. I was really not liking this at all. It really... it damn near bored me to death. After this, we go to yet another battle royal that was also already in progress. There's several guys in this one, and I don't remember all of them. Like Sergeant Slaughter was in there, Bulldog is in there again. Believe the Mountie was in there again. A couple other guys. I did find it slightly ironic that they had this little video highlighting El Matador, Tito Santana, and they cut to this battle royal already in progress, and as soon as they cut to this battle royal, Tito Santana gets eliminated. I feel like if they wanted to do that, they could cut to it after Tito was already eliminated, because I feel like if you were trying to highlight him in like just 2 segments before this, having him eliminated the second that you kind of get into this battle royal, I don't know. I just really don't understand why they would have done that way. I did find it just a bit ironic. This right here was a prime example of why I hate battle royals and why I extremely loathe battle royals from back in this time frame. Because battle royals are boring as it is, even by today's standards. The battle royals back then were so boring, so slow. It seems like it takes forever for... You can have, again, there's like 5 or 6 guys in the ring, and you have one guy trying to get one guy over the top rope for about a year and a half. And finally somebody else comes up and it's like a club to the back, and he grabs that guy and moves him to the other far corner, and he tries to eliminate him, and it takes another year and a half. And half the guys are, walking around and, not doing much anything. Everything is so slow. When they're trying to eliminate guys, they'll like lift one of their legs up and they'll stand there for, about 30 minutes. Ugh. One thing I did like, though, the Mountie finds his way to the outside of the ring, but he didn't go over the top rope, so he wasn't eliminated, right? Well, the referees start counting him out. And so it basically forced the Mountie back into the ring. And you won't see that nowadays. You have a Battle Royal or even one of the Royal Rumbles or something nowadays, somebody goes out to the outside of the ring, they'll lay there for 30 to 40 minutes. Or they just roll out of the ring and, you know, it's one of those, it's supposed to be a surprise where they'll jump back in the ring at the very end because they were never eliminated. This right here, I wish they would bring this rule back. If you find yourself outside the ring, the referees are out in the ring ought to be counting your ass out. Get your ass back in the ring because you're still a part of this match. So I really liked that. I found that it was an interesting rule, and I really wish that they would bring that back. It's something that needs to happen. There's a 3-on-2. It's Sergeant Slaughter and British Bulldog against the Mountie, and I think Repo Man was in there, and I forget who the other one was, but now at this point, there's a little bit of supposed teamwork going on. So Sergeant Slaughter nearly gets eliminated, and so the Bulldog saves him and pulls him back in, and it's still every man for himself, right? So I didn't quite understand that at all. But I'm absolutely hating this by this point. This is taking forever. Finally, the torture ends where the Bulldog wins this one too. So now this is like the sixth thing on this tape that features the British Bulldog, and this is like the third or fourth match that the Bulldog is winning. So again, I'm really feeling like this is just a British Bulldog highlight tape. I was just glad to see that the Battle Royal was over. I absolutely hated it. And I actually considered turning this tape off at this point because I think I was falling asleep. I know I at least had to take a break. I had to get something to drink. I had to walk around a little bit and try to wake up. I absolutely hated it. We go to, I don't know if they were in the Palace or something. I didn't quite catch it, but Bobby the Brain Heenan and Alfred Hayes, they're in some building. They're looking at art for just a few moments, and then they cut back away from that. All I could say was, why? What did this have to do with anything? You know, I didn't feel like it did anything for the show or anything. It just, why? Why is it there? Why am I seeing this? We go to the next match, which was Sergeant Slaughter and Rick Martel. Both guys are playing up the crowd. You know, Rick Martel, obviously, he's the model. He is the heel here in this situation. You know, he's posing. The fans are booing him damn near out of the building. Sergeant Slaughter will just do like a salute or something. They absolutely love the guy. They go hold for a little bit at the start of the match. You know, some working of the arms, the headlock takeovers, the head scissor holds, the stuff like that. So hold for both guys for a little bit. Sergeant Slaughter starts working on the left arm. Some decent stuff between both guys in the match. I didn't write down a whole lot of it, but essentially, by the end, you get the Cobra Clutch locked on from the Sarge on Rick Martel. They do the whole classic, you know, pick up the arm, and if it drops 3 times, you lose. So on the third time, they're too close to the ropes, and his arm falls on the top rope to cause the rope break to break up the hold. I found that was an interesting way to do that. I kind of like that. That was definitely something that, a heel skates by the skin of his teeth, you know, just on some bullshit. So I liked that. I thought that was good. Rick Martel grabs what they're calling on the commentary the atomizer. And I'm not sure exactly what happens, but the referee is distracted, it seems like, for some reason. Sarge gets the shot with the atomizer in the head or in the throat. Rick Martel ends up winning the match. this was one of those classic things from like the early 90s style where it was a bit slow. Especially at the beginning with just the posing and the playing to the crowd and that sort of thing. It had a very slow start, but it did pick up. And with the psychology in the ring, the things that they had done, it ended up being a halfway decent match. Nothing really horrible to say about it. After this, next match, we go to El Matador, Tito Santana, against Kato, or Kato, depending on who is calling the name on the commentary. I had never seen Kato before, at least as that gimmick. Kato would later go on to become Max Moon, and I do know Max Moon a little bit, so doing a little research, I found that it was in fact the same guy. El Matador, working some holds at the beginning of the match. Kato with some rope breaks to break these things up. Essentially, again, I felt like it was a typical early 90s match where the babyface, he's trying to, work the holds and stuff, and the heel is finding a way to skate by and get out of the predicament. The heel will then do a couple heelish things, raking of the face, your typical like clubbing blows to kind of keep his adversary down. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot to speak of here. Tito finally wins with like this jumping punch. I guess it was the prelude Superman punch is kind of what it looked like to me. But a jumping punch, and Tito Santana, El Matador, ends up winning the match. And it was one of those, it wasn't horrible, it just wasn't good. I guess it was decent for the time. It probably would have passed as just your average match at the time. But it didn't do anything for me. It wasn't exciting. And I know that kind of goes to slightly a little bit of the comparison. But here's the match where, Tito Santana had a name. Kato did not. But Tito Santana was also not, I guess I feel, extremely relevant. He wasn't like one of the top guys, I guess. So this match had nothing going for it. It really had no reason to be. So it was just kind of And that was about it for that. We do go to, I guess, what you could consider, the main event of this show, or this compilation tape, and it is Shawn Michaels against the WWF champion Randy Macho Man Savage. Shawn Michaels is accompanied by Sensational Sherry. Savage starts to come to the ring, and yes, he is the champ, but he's limping really, really bad. I don't recall them mentioning on commentary why he was limping exactly. But he's working an injury here. At the beginning of the match, Savage, being that he is hurt, he is injured, he's backpedaling away from the heel, which is not something that you see very often. Really showing the injury, can barely put any weight on the leg at all. Shawn keeps trying to sweep the leg, keeps trying to grab the leg. Randy Savage is trying to protect it. He's leaving the ring. He's limping around the ring, just trying to stay away from Shawn. They mentioned that, if Shawn can get Randy Savage back in the ring, get a pinfall or submission, he'll win the title. I didn't hear them mention that it was for the title, before the match started, so that was a little confusing to me. They do start fighting on the outside quite a bit. Shawn ends up getting run into the ring post, things like that. Sensational Sherry's trying to get involved where she can. Your typical heel manager. You get a double axe handle by Randy Savage, injuring the leg even further. We get to a point where Shawn Michaels finds himself outside the ring, and in your classic heel fashion, he tries to leave the ring. He tries to leave the arena. He's walking back to the locker room. He's done. He's not going to continue this any longer. Since this match was apparently for the title, I found it interesting and confusing at the same time of why this would be a spot in the match. Since it's for the title, yes, I realize you're the heel, but why would you walk away from this opportunity, especially when the champion is in such an injured state as he is? I felt that it didn't fit the match at all. So I really was kind of confused why that had happened, but Savage goes back up the aisleway, grabs Shawn, drags him back to the ring. Once they get back to the ring, Sensational Sherry tries to get involved. She's on the apron. Savage kind of grabs her. Savage steps out of the way while Shawn charges in. Sensational Sherry gets wiped out. Shortly after this, Shawn finally starts to get a chance to work on the injured leg of Randy Savage. Shawn, being the heel here, is distracting the referee, diverting his attention. Sensational Sherry's getting involved, getting the cheap shots in, working the leg herself. You get a couple different figure 4 leg locks from Shawn working on that leg. They even mention on the commentary at one point that the referee may have to stop the match. And being that the ring psychology at this point in the match, I feel, was really good. You have this injured champion, the heel's working on the injury. The fact that they may have to stop the match because Randy Savage can't continue and the title just may change hands, I like that. Being that the first thing that you see of Randy Savage, he's limping to the ring. That's, to me, I feel exactly the way that this match should have been done. So essentially we go to another figure 4 attempt by Shawn. He gets pushed off by Randy Savage. Shawn ends up hitting the ring post. Randy Savage, hobbles and scratches and claws and pulls his way up to the top rope. Finally drops the elbow, and Randy Savage is the winner and retains the WWF Championship. Afterwards, Shawn is irate. He and Sherry are trying to assault Randy Savage, and then he starts assaulting some officials. And essentially, that is where this match and segment ends. You go finally to Lord Alfred Hayes closing the show. He's standing by one of these bridges, and essentially, that is it. End of show. I was not a fan of how this tape was produced. If they were going to do this tape and this video in this manner, I wish they would have mentioned, because they had mentioned actually on several of these matches that these were exclusive matches for this tape. So I wish they would have mentioned, hey, we're in Germany or we're in Spain. Sometimes they would do that, but it would kind of just be in the middle of a sentence or in the middle of a conversation that the commentary team would be having. But there wasn't even like a graphic. Before the match starts, you'd get the names like, hey, it's Roddy Piper versus Barbarian. But they should have had, especially if it's specifically for this tape, they should at least had from Spain or from Germany, or tell me where this is happening. Give me some kind of insight, because it just seems so random. And because of the way that this was done, there was no real storylines. There was no real flow to the show at all. So therefore, for me, it was hard to stay invested in watching this. Since it seemed as though none of these matches really had any bearing on anything. None of them really truly mattered. There was essentially, with the exception of the fact that this was requested by a fan, I would have never have decided to just watch this on my own. And quite honestly, there will be really no reason for me to ever watch this again. None of the matches to me really stood out as being extremely great. Some of them, I believe, were good matches for the time period. The first opening tag match and the Michael Savage match being a couple examples of this. They were definitely good for at the time. The psychology was good. It was good to see, things happening in the ring that made sense. I did enjoy watching that. But as far as the show overall, it was hard to stay invested in because, again, there was no real flow to it. So, basically, ladies and gentlemen, that is WWF World Tour 1992. Once again, thanks to Nick for requesting this for a review. Nick, I'm not sure if you requested this because you really enjoy this show and you just wanted to hear my thoughts and opinions, or if you really hated this show and wanted to hear me tear it apart. But either way, I appreciate the request. And if any of you have any requests for some classic events or pay-per-views, send them my way, and I will try to get them done and get to them as quickly as I possibly can. With that being said, this has been the classic review of WWF World Tour. Once again, I hope everybody has a Happy New Year, and we'll catch you on the next one. I am Dwayne Rothman. I am the Furious Wrestling Fan, and this has been a classic review.